Hi. So the reason for this interview is because we've been getting a lot of questions about how is it that I as a clinician can serve active military personnel and veterans, and how can I do that through telehealth? So to answer that question, I have two fantastic presenters here for us. And first, let me introduce myself. I'm Ray Barrett. I'm the CEO of the Telehealth Certification Institute. We provide training on telemental health. And I also have with us Dr. Randy Phelps. He is the CEO of Given Hour. And Given Hour provides confidential, no cost mental health services to those who qualify through different programs. They serve veterans. And I also have with us Dr. Mark Stebnicki, and he's a mental health counselor. He created and is the instructor for the Clinical Military Counseling Certificate Program, which is a comprehensive training program on serving active duty service members and veterans and their families. And he's also very well published on the topic of providing counseling to veterans. So just to start off, Mark and Randy, one of the things I'd like you to talk about is the need for getting behavioral health services for military personnel and veterans and their families, and what are some of the barriers that they come across?
Sure. Well, I'll start and I'll talk about, 21 years in academia in North Carolina. When you go out and do your internship, then basically you're working with active duty service members, you're working with veterans with disabilities and their family members. So the typical counselor ed program doesn't train you other than civilian mental health. So I came up with Operation Military Counseling to train up clinicians to work with the unique cultural differences with military service members, veterans, families, and so forth. So, what I found is our internship students were going out working with these groups, but they had civilian mental health knowledge. So, I'm training up folks for the Operation Military Counseling or the Clinical Military Counseling Certificate that I developed, both at East Carolina University and through the telehealth, to increase their knowledge, awareness, and skills of these unique cultural differences, and to try to work with the whole person in terms of medical, psychosocial, mental health aspects. So, there's a lot of stereotypes about the military culture, Randy, as you've probably seen in your lengthy history here. And so if, as a mental health professional in my psychotherapy practice, if I approach that service member as a civilian, I'm not going to earn that circle of trust. So, one thing I do with trainings that I've done with the certificate program and when I was in academia is to teach clinicians how to earn that circle of trust so they can get to that working alliance. And what are your thoughts, Randy?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate that. Given Hour was started 16 years ago by clinical psychologist, Dr. Barbara Van Dalen, and who is now and has been for a while, my wife. One of the things that we know after giving 340,000 hours of free care to veterans and service members and their family members as well through our network of 4,500 licensed mental health providers across the U.S., one of the things we know is that you are so right, Mark, about the cultural competence. So if there are clinicians out there who want to help with this population, and I think we'd all appreciate that, if you don't take basic training in what it's like to be in that person's boots or moccasins or whatever, so that you have some degree of cultural competence, you will actually do harm. Because that person may have had great difficulty coming to see you or to see you online, and then they have a bad experience. So, geez, is a sergeant higher than a lieutenant? That kind of question
right.
will end the session, for example. So basic information at that level is really critical, and you can get that through Mark's program and through the program at TCI.
Yeah, so it's critical that you get that cultural training, and like you said, Randy, knowing the difference between enlisted service members and officers, that can be a rapport builder, and knowing how that there might be a little hesitant in going into counseling because of the stigma that there is in the military, and the researchers will say that service members don't go to counseling because there's several reasons. They're embarrassed. They have difficulty getting time off. That mental health counseling would harm their career, could hurt their security clearance. Their unit members could seem as weak. So, if as Randy speaks to the cultural significance, there is a ethical obligation of the mental health practitioner to be able to get training, to be able to build this circle of trust and get to the working alliance, as you say. So, Given Hours, a great organization, I think that's brought visibility to the need to, first of all, get training, and then also the need for service members and veterans to get to counseling and without the barriers of maybe going through the Naval Hospital, the Army Hospital, are going through on-base MFLAC family provider because of the confidentiality that the veterans and service members want.
It's I love to pick it up there, and we're sort of leaving Ray out of the conversation, I see, Mark, but we're often running. Clearly, one of the reasons that Given Hour we think has been so successful over 16 years now is that because early on the decision was made to keep it a totally confidential experience for folks who are seeking care and outside of the military care system. And as you said, one of the most powerful barriers is really potentially loss of job. A lot of these men and women are afraid to see somebody in the DoD systems because the reports go back to the commander about this person is seeing the psychiatrist or psychologist or LPC or whatever, because the commander's job is to be focused on force readiness, not on your mental health. And so one of our biggest referrers of all over all these years has been the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, sending people to us because they know their people need care, but they also know they're not going to need it. Yeah.
And so the stereotype about the military, as you know, Randy, is that it's an all-male occupation. Well, the modern military family looks much different now than it's ever looked. There's more women that serve. There's more African Americans, more Asian Americans, more Latinos, Latinas, and so getting some cultural competency in knowing the within group differences here, because there's not just one military, as you say. And so, picking up on your point, Randy, about that the DoD is in a state of total readiness at all times. Sometimes mental health aspects get ignored. There is a changing culture, however, on some bases, and the DoD has put together like the Army Wellness Program. They call it the Total Force Fitness, where the objective is to, as they say, to build a more lethal fighting force that focuses on the service members' overall health. So, a lot of times we just think about service members' physical health and we ignore their mental health. But there is some movement in the DoD that's put together some wellness programs, and but for the most part, you're in a mission-forward environment. The life and safety of others are dependent on your quick and decisive actions. Your head's on a swivel. So, the main priority is to have this readiness here.
Yeah, and I know, so a lot of veterans have trouble just even getting access to a provider, from what I hear, finding a local provider that serves veterans. or if they're a veteran, the VA hospital might be quite a distance from them. So maybe Randy and Mark, both of you could talk about how has telehealth kind of helped overcome that barrier to access, and how has that been helpful to clients?
Go ahead, Randy.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Ray. The telehealth, I've been in the mental health profession. I was at the American Psychological Association for 25 years before retiring and then coming into this position at Given Hour. And it was always a hard sell with our providers about telehealth services, even though we know from the research for the last 20 years at least that these services are as effective as in-person services. So that's for the most part. There are a few exceptions, but that's been settled long ago. But practitioners just want to sit in a room with somebody. They don't want to deliver services this way. The pandemic has changed all that and changed barriers even for those who want to provide telehealth services, so that the federal government relaxed the guidelines on the use of HIPAA compliant software for a time. Those are coming back, of course, and also then increased reimbursement of services that weren't reimbursed beforehand. So as those barriers have come off, we have certainly seen at Given Hour our provider force really embracing TCI, and this is one of the reasons that we're proud of our partnership with Ray and TCI to provide training for our members and others. And one of the things that I had been trying to do for a couple of years was to increase the use of telehealth services even before the pandemic. But I pulled some data this morning for the last 6 months, or actually it was the second 6 months of 2020. So it'd be last summer through December. And we typically, of course, are doing the greatest service delivery face-to-face for the last 15, 16 years. Our video counseling represented 52% of the hours given in that 6 months, telephone another 22. So we're talking like 75% or so of services delivered through telehealth and only 26% face-to-face. The majority of those were to veterans, service members, or their family members. So it really enabled us to keep doing what we do day in and day out. I will tell you, though, that the other issue that I think we're struggling with as a country is that mental health services are now in such demand, you can't find a place in somebody's caseload across the country, veteran or otherwise. I believe the convenience of telehealth services really is the solution to that. And with regard to Given Hour's need to serve our populations, we need more telehealth equipped therapists to join our volunteer force. So that was right. That was a plug for Given Hour. Help us find more therapists.
Yeah. And we can't forget the National Guard and the reservists, because Absolutely. After they come home on deployment, they're in their little communities. They go back to their job at Home Depot or whatever. So the full-time active duty service member, when they go back to base, they can get triaged. They have enriched programs and services. Whereas reservists in the National Guard tend to be the higher risk population. So telebehavioral health is a great asset for the Guard and for reservists, because they miss out on a lot being in that family unit that you tend to see around base towns and the base themselves.
We have a very, very active group of Guard and reservists coming through our system. That's exactly right. You're out there in a small town, rural town. There's no VA close by, or other kinds of facilities like that. It is the it's really the solution to a lot of this.
Yeah, and can you speak to what are the avenues for a clinician to provide services to veterans? What organizations? How is it that they can position themselves to provide these services? And then specifically through Given Hour, what's the process for that? What does it look like?
How about I take the Given Hour part and then we'll broaden it out. It's very, very simple to become a provider for Given Hour. You literally just go to our website. It's new as of a couple of weeks ago, in fact. And if you go to givenhour.org, look up in the top listing and you'll see providers, licensed providers. Click on that and a drop down and it will take you through. And then we verify your credentials and so forth, and then set up our matching program. So it's very easy to get involved. The other thing I would say, and I'll turn it over to Mark, is that the major insurance companies in the country really understand the importance of telehealth services. And so you need to consider becoming a provider in those kinds of systems. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, so just in the interest of time, I kind of want to summarize. Number one, it's important to earn that circle of trust with the military culture, and then try to broaden that, because there are more women, more African Americans, Latinos, and so forth. There's within cultural differences within the military. So building this knowledge, awareness, and skills of the unique cultural differences will help you earn that circle of trust and get to the working lines. Telebehavioral health is a great asset, because you can take in people that can't get off work, that they don't have to travel. You can work with guards and reservists. We need to be thinking of the whole person, and building resources so they can have optimal mental health services and healing. So.
And there's some third-party payers specifically that pay for counseling for veterans. Is that right? Like TRICARE or other third-party payers that clinicians would look at being paneled with?
Sure. That's important when you're first starting out in practice, to get on as many panels as you can. There's many veterans that also are on Medicare. And as we know, Medicare is primary on all insurance, so even before TRICARE. So get on as many insurance panels as you can. There's organizations that are government contractors, like Inflac Family Providers and some other ones. Those are mainly base-oriented counseling services.
Absolutely.
And then Given Hour is volunteered hours, right?
Yes, correct.
And there's no cost to the veterans. Does it also provide services to veterans' family members, or what's?
Yeah, it's an important point, Ray, and thank you. I didn't explain this well. So where the name Given Hour comes from is when you decide to volunteer your services with Given Hour, you're committing to volunteering an hour a week for a year. So that creates the pool that we use to do the online matching or hand matching if needed to somebody with services. So anybody who is a veteran of the military, it was just post 9/11 war veterans, but we've opened it up broader than that. And basic active service members, we have lots and lots of active service people, as I said before, National Guard and Reserve. But we also see at no cost family members. And the way we define who's a family member is a loved one. So it doesn't really require marriage.
That's fantastic. And then when the clinician is matched with a prospective client, does the clinician get an opportunity to do some screening to make sure that to see if it's going to be a fit
The client and the clinician, yes, absolutely. It's very important that both sides feel comfortable, obviously. The other thing that we get asked is, do I just get 1 hour with this therapist? And the answer is no, you get as long as it takes.
Okay, yeah, so that the client and clinician, they would, they would stay with that, the client would stay with that same clinician for the duration of treatment.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. And the provider, is the provider of the services given hour? Is the provider the clinician's own practice?
It's a good question. In terms of, it's an important liability question, Ray, so that you have to carry your own liability, professional liability insurance. It is your responsibility and your responsibility to maintain your licensure. We check and regularly make sure that's the case.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you both very much. That gives a lot of clarity of, how to serve veterans, what to look for, how to be prepared, how to position yourself to provide this really needed service. So Mark Stebnicki, thank you so much for what you do. And Randy Phelps,
Thanks,
greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you both and appreciate the opportunity today. Take care.